This is Democracy Watch. Mark, we have new news here out of the FBI. Dan Bongino named Deputy Director of the FBI. How does this news impact what you perceive as the FBI's mission is going to be?
I mean, the FBI's mission is to target Donald Trump's political opponents with harassment, with investigations and the like, and to generally be available to do whatever it is that Donald Trump wants them to do at any given time. Like to just be at his beck and call. If he wants this person investigated, if he wants that person, if he wants AP News investigated, like they are just there. He and Kash Patel are there to serve literally at the pleasure of the president. You know, that's a phrase we use that is very sort of old and has a lot of grandeur around it. Serving at the pleasure of the president usually means that you serve as long as the president had confidence in you. In the Trump administration, something totally different. It is literally as long as they are like the court jesters keeping the president entertained, which, as you know, is one of Dan Bongino's, sort of skills, is as someone who posts online and keeps the president entertained.
Right. What do you make of the fact that when Kash Patel spoke with the FBI Agents Association, that he promised those people that he would tap an active onboard special agent for deputy director? Far from doing that, he just chose the Republican Party's most prolific shitposter in Dan Bongino instead.
Yeah, he didn't mean it at the time he said it. I mean, like, you can call it a lie, you can call it a mistruth, you can call it whatever you want, but like it just words. It's like the words came out of his mouth because in that audience, that's what they wanted to hear. And so he said those words. But anyone who does not understand what Kash Patel is there to achieve does not understand where we stand right now in America and where we stand as a democracy. Anyone who thinks that Dan Bongino was put there for any reason other than because he will carry out the most extreme version of whatever Donald Trump wants him to simply is not in touch with the reality and the threats facing us today.
We have an FBI that is composed of people ostensibly who are looking to fulfill their oath to the Constitution and follow the law. And so what happens if we're in a situation where clearly Dan Bongino's priority is not to the Constitution, it's not to statute, it's not to the law, it is his blind deference and loyalty to Donald Trump. And so what happens in the event that you have the FBI more broadly and you have Dan Bongino's edicts and they clash with each other? What happens in these instances?
Well, so you see one of three things, right? You either see resignations, just like we have seen some early resignations in the Department of Justice by people who are quite courageous and saying, I'm not going to go along with something that I've been asked to do because it violates my oath or because it violates my conscience. So that's category one. Category two is you'll have some people who will see it as an opportunity, right? They will think, you know what, I can get ahead in my career by switching sides, essentially, by embracing what it is that Kash Patel and Dan Bongino want, and that is obviously something that we're all on the lookout for. And then there's the third category, which is the most conflicted one, and where, frankly, I think there is more nuance, and it is what do you do with the people who go along with it, but they are not embracing it. In other words, they want to keep their jobs. They are told to do something that violates FBI policy. They want to do something that they know is not consistent with the way that law enforcement is supposed to act. They're not like leading the charge, but they're also not resigning, right? And they're going along. And this is where we always have this conversation about whether those people should stay or those people should go. Right. And I think that a lot of the conventional wisdom has been it is important that those people stay. And what I have said more recently is if they are going to do good things, in other words, if they're going to slow down the bad things, they should stay. But if they're going to do the bad things, it honestly doesn't matter whether they're doing it with gusto and enthusiasm or they're doing it with reluctance. They're still doing the bad things. And so, this played out very much with the Mayor Adams motion to dismiss, where you had the line prosecutor in New York, resign and say, you will find a coward or a fool to file this motion, but it was never going to be me. And then they, in fact, found someone at Main Justice to do that. And the coverage of that person was sort of, people saying, well, he was doing it because he was trying to protect other people from being fired. In my book, he's the coward or the fool. Now, he's probably the coward, not the fool, because he probably didn't want to do it. But in the end, he filed the motion. And that's the very thing that that two lawyers resigned over. So I think you're going to see that same thing play out big time in the FBI, where there is even more of a culture of straight arrow, follow the rules. And there will be an even greater divergence between that culture of rule following and what they may very well be asked to do.
What does this mean for the broader security of the country, that you have folks who are so focused on retribution for Donald Trump, so focused on achieving their political ends, that these are the people that are in charge? What does this mean for regular American safety if this is where the top leadership's priority is trained on?
No, that's exactly right. I mean, people need to remember that that the FBI plays a very important role in counterterrorism, in protecting the homeland, as well as fighting crime. Right? I mean, they are
and they have limited resources, by the way. So it's not like they can still just do everything.
That's right, and they have had limited resource. The issue of resource constraints with the FBI is not a new problem, and so they have had to, over the years, prioritize certain kinds of federal crimes they look into. They've had to prioritize terrorism domestically. And so to the extent that they are being told, prioritize going after Donald Trump's enemies, to the extent that they are being told to prioritize, media outlets that they don't like, or people that he doesn't like, or chasing down whatever rabbit hole Elon Musk wants them to chase down. To the extent they're doing that, they're not doing one of the other two things, right? They're either not protecting the American people's safety, or they're not fighting potential terrorist threats. And of course, as you point out, they've had resource constraints. And when we see resignations and when we see purges and firings, that only makes that worse, not better.
Marc, in terms of what the FBI would be able to do, knowing that there's Kash Patel who's in charge and he's published an enemies list, which includes a lot of members of the media, knowing the ways in which Dan Bongino, I know, has attacked you publicly, I know has attacked me publicly. This is somebody who very much views people in the independent media space, in the left of center media space, as the enemies of Donald Trump, and therefore his focus as he engages in his tenure at the FBI. What are the implications for people like us who work in this independent media space and who obviously have a political ideology that doesn't comport with that of Donald Trump?
Look, the fact is that Donald Trump wants to crush the media. Donald Trump wants to crush his political enemies. And certainly when it comes to independent media on the left, Donald Trump finds kind of the confluence of everything he hates the most, right? It is so we would be kidding ourselves to think that the FBI under Kash Patel, that the FBI under Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, that the FBI under the Attorney General, who sits on top of all of it, Pam Bondi, who is also an election denier, we'd be kidding ourselves to think that they are not going to go after their political enemies, including people who are in Democratic politics, in progressive politics, and also people who are in left of center media or run media organizations or speak out at media organizations that are highly critical of Donald Trump. That's like baked in the cake. The question is, what do you do? What do you do? Do you cower? Do you hide? Or do you stand up tall and say, I am not going to bend a knee? Because here's the thing, they're not going to forget who you are. You could go hide right now and they would still remember who Brian Tyler Cohen is. I could go hide right now and they would still remember who I am. And so the question is, are you going to shrink from this fight, or are you going to stand up tall and proud and say, you may have the power of the federal government and the awesome power that it is behind you, but I am not going to stop speaking out for what is true. I am not going to stop speaking out against what is wrong. And then we sort of gird for what comes next. It's not going to be easy, and it's not going to be pleasant. I think there are going to be people along the way who are going to throw in the towel and are going to give up. There will be some people along the way, frankly, and we've seen this. I mean, we have seen already not so much in the independent media space, although I probably could name a couple there too, but in the legacy media space, a whole lot of people switch sides. And if not switch sides, they've at least gone to neutral. They went from fierce democracy defenders to now sort of not so much interested in the issue. And, you're going to continue to see that over the next 4 years, people who feel like they are better off just throwing in rather than standing up for what's right.
Correct. I mean, you see, the Mark Zuckerbergs who immediately make changes to kowtow to Trump. You see even ABC News and George Stephanopoulos settling that frivolous lawsuit. You see the CBS and 60 Minutes likely going to do the same. And of course,
maybe a couple of morning talk show hosts
who may or may not have gone down to Mar-a-Lago to kiss the ring. And so we're seeing more and more instances of this. And with the people like Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg, where they have a lot of other exposure in front of the government because they have their hands in other projects, I think the benefit of being in this independent media space for you and for me is that we don't have any other pending projects in front of the Department of Defense. We don't have any contracts that are pending in front of Donald Trump's administration. And so we are free to say whatever the fuck we want if we want to say something against him. I think the really what our currency is as we engage in the next 4 years in a position that's against Trump's FBI and his DOJ, our currency is going to be able to speak to an audience that is growing larger and larger. And so I would just ask for anybody watching right now, knowing full well that the best way for this administration to be able to quash dissent is going to be their ability to make sure that we can't speak to people, that we have a small enough audience that if something happens to us, it doesn't matter. Our antidote to that is going to be building up as big an audience as we can so that we do have the ability to have a platform, to speak to people, to be able to shine a light on everything they're doing, to expose the corruption of this administration. So I'll use this opportunity right now, knowing that we have this update, not only with Kash Patel, but with Dan Bongino at the FBI. If you haven't yet subscribed to Democracy Docket, that's the news outlet Mark founded to focus on everything voting elections. Also a trusted resource right now at a time when we need it most. Please make sure to sign up. I also have a newsletter myself, and I'll put both of those links on the screen at the end of this video. This way, we're not necessarily, even if this administration wants to put pressure on Facebook or YouTube or any other platform that we operate on, TikTok or Instagram, having email addresses come in to our newsletters is a direct way to reach people regardless of what happens, regardless of whatever overreach this FBI, this DOJ, this administration tries to put on us. So I'll put the links to both Democracy Docket and my newsletter right here on the screen. If you haven't yet signed up, please sign up and support independent media at a time when we need it most.
And you make an important point, which is that they are counting. They are counting on the idea that if they go after their political enemies, there will not be an uproar. That if they go after people who have been their critics, no one will care. That if people are deplatformed off of one platform, people will be like, I'll watch something else. Right. So when Brian says how important it is to sign up for his newsletter or to sign up for Democracy Docket, it is critical not just because you will get good information and analysis, which you will, right? I think Democracy Docket's product's excellent. Brian's newsletter is superb, right? So it's not just that you will in the here and now get a real benefit and a value from it, but it is also providing the kind of safety and security that if there is an effort to target independent media, there is a way to get the word out and that people will care and that people will stay engaged. So I want to echo everything Brian just said.
I'll put those links right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. Again, please sign up if you haven't yet had the opportunity to do so. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
I'm Marc Elias.
This is Democracy Watch.